All right, folks, it's been a week since the beta dropped. Thank you to everyone who's checked out the rules so far. It's really awesome. If you're watching this, you probably saw the video, What is Crossguard? And now you're wondering, okay, I know what it is, I know why I want to play it. Now, how do I play it? So this video is for you, and I'm going to do a little bit of rambling, but by the end of this video, you'll know the basic systems and how to play the game. For those who haven't watched the other video, Crossguard is basically a role-playing system that aims to be fast and flexible and do all these fancy things that all the other games ain't doing. But if you want more details, you're going to have to watch that one. Right now, we're kind of seeing a renaissance in Right now, we're seeing a renaissance in 4th edition style rules with a focus on gamification. As an example, some games might give you abilities like superiority dice, abstract resources. Crossguard is not any of that. I think being able to fly around and shoot fireballs is cool enough without needing to be further gamified. So, Crossguard strips everything back to the mechanical essentials, and it adds a few little things that really open up reactive fiction-first sort of play. Now, this is not a rules-light game. You can play it rules-light, but it's somewhere between kind of rules light and rules very heavy. It's built for crunchy tactical combat. There's little systems you can bolt on, like location damage for people who like that kind of thing from GURPS or Mythos. But you can also play it super light narrative, stripping everything back to just the core resolution system, which is what we're going to be talking about in this video. 5th edition has something we call exception-based RPG design. In other words, you have your core rules, but then every character has these exceptions that break the rules in some way. That means that as you level, the game gets more and more complicated because each character has about 10 unique abilities that all interact with the abilities of every other character and every other monster. So in Crossguard instead, about 90% of the things your character can do are going to come under aptitudes. That's just your core stats, skills, and niches. An aptitude is just a fancy way of saying your skill score, which is, it might be your strength or it might be your dexterity plus your skill bonus plus any little niche bonus that you might have towards that specific task. That's your aptitude score, right? So speaking of stats, what are the stats in Crossguard? You get 4 stats: might, dexterity, wits, and spirit. Spirit being kind of like, willpower, right? A lot of these stats, what they actually mean depends on your character. Like wits could mean book smarts, but it could also mean like instinct, intuition. And the way you're going to represent that is through your skill choices. Like a character who's very academically inclined might have skills like science. They might have skills in mechanics or lore or trivia. And a character who has good gut instincts might represent that through maybe a social skill or an insight skill or perception skills, which all come under wits as well. Sometimes the stat that you use can be a bit variable. Like I mentioned before, we use wits for most social checks. Like if you're deceiving someone, if you're trying to persuade them through like an intellectual argument. But you can also use spirit if, for instance, you're just trying to earnestly convey the truth to someone, or if you're trying to like charm them, for instance. That's going to come under spirit. So anyway, we got the 4 stats, then we've got skills. Skills are kind of what they're broad spheres of competency. In other games like D&D, you would just add your proficiency to your stat. Here you add your skill bonus. So melee is a skill, ranged is a skill, magic is a skill, but you also have things like lore, trivia, perseverance, social. And then as a final layer, if you want your character to have very specific things that they're good at, you have niches. So if your character is like a pistolier, they're a gunslinger, then you would want to take the pistols niche as that little extra to add on to your range skill. If your character is really good at deception, then you would want to take points in that niche. Then you can add that on to your social skill. And then that stat, skill, and niche bonus, all 3, that forms your whole aptitude. And with niches, there's a whole ton of them in the book as kind of examples and guidelines. But you can also just make up your own, particularly for things like sciences, which are so broad. If you want your character to be an astrophysicist, you can do that. You can represent that if the game's going to be about that. So it's very flexible in that way. And the biggest thing we've accomplished with niches is a lot of these little granular abilities in other games that might come under feats or specific class traits that all have their own little rules. Most of those, if it literally just ends up as a bonus to a thing, which it kind of does in most of these cases, you are better at that thing. We have cut out the fluff. It is literally just a number that you add, and it all works in the same way. It all comes through this core check system, which we're going to talk about now. And obviously, just like in other games, if you don't have a particular skill being called for, if you don't have an applicable niche, then you would just roll with your stat. So yeah, 90% of the stuff your character can do, we can just represent as a number like that. And what's cool is, if you want to set a difficulty in this game, it is the same numbers. So if you have an aptitude of 10, something with a difficulty of 10 is a fair challenge, basically 50-50 odds of success, right? So if my aptitude's higher, I know that I'm more than likely to succeed. If it's lower, I know that the odds are against me. And in the system, there are all kinds of ways you can improve your odds of success. As for the check system, every roll uses one or more d10s. You have your own personal die, the positive die. This represents your character, how well they perform at this particular moment in time. And then you have the difficulty die, the negative die. And that's all the things outside your character's control. You might make a great film, but the critics don't like it. That's out of your control. That's the difficulty die. So when you make a check, you roll one positive die and one negative. So when you make a check, you roll one positive die and one negative die. The difference between them is the result on the dice, whether it's positive or negative. So say the positive dice is higher, you roll a 10, and the negative dice is a 9, then the difference is 1, you get +1 to your score, right? And say the negative dice is higher, well then the difference is deducted from your score. But yeah, the dice results are essentially 1d10 minus the other for most of your common checks. So your dice results are going to end up anywhere from a -9 to a +9. And you just add that to your character's aptitude, and that is your final score, which we can compare to the difficulty. So, example, if your aptitude is a 10 and you get a +2 on the dice, that's a result score of 12. If you get a -3 on the dice with your aptitude of 10, it's a result score of 7. And if your result score beats the difficulty score, then you succeed. And what you'll notice is the dice average out to a 0. And that's the most common result here. Whereas those extremes of +9 or -9, that's literally a 1 in 100 chance of happening on these 2d10. And what's cool about that is if you want to set a difficulty for the character, then it's the exact same numbers. You can rank your own aptitude against the various difficulties in the game. And roughly they go from about 0, that's kind of the average unskilled person, doesn't know what they're doing, and the aptitudes go up to about 16, maybe 17 if your character has got an innate bonus in that score. And obviously you can kind of just keep going. That's like the human limit is like 16 or 17. But if we're going to superhero levels, there is no limit to this game. It does scale indefinitely. It is built to scale to galaxy destroying levels and still work. So yeah, this game does not have a fixed difficulty system. I'm not a huge fan of that in games. It comes across to me as very like not trusting the players with any level of complexity at all. I trust you to be able to manage a difficulty class. If you can play 5th edition and you can set a difficulty score, you can do it here. You're fine. But obviously, in a lot of games, if you smash past the difficulty, there is no built-in mechanical reward for doing so. In fact, in combat, in a lot of games, you can smash past and then you can roll really low on your damage die, which kind of sucks. There's a world of difference between just barely passing your exam versus getting every question right. Missing a shot versus shooting yourself in the foot. So, that's where success levels come into play. So, in Crossguard, everything is handled through the success level system. If you roll really high, then you're going to get a good result no matter the situation. Basically what we do is we compare your final result score to the difficulty. Obviously, if you beat it, you succeed, but at certain thresholds, you will hit greater levels of success. And we use that for things like inflicting damage in combat, but it can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. So if you beat the difficulty by 1 to 4, that's a basic success. If it's 5 to 8, that's a sure success. 9 to 12 is critical, and 13 and above is an ultimate success. And what a basic success means is you kind of barely scraped through. You might have just pulled yourself up from the cliff edge just by your fingertips and struggled to do it. Sure success wasn't an issue for you. You did it fairly confidently, right? Critical success, you went above and beyond. Ultimate success, it's basically a total full success. You achieved everything you could possibly want. And the same is true for failure as well. You can just have a basic failure, which means you didn't achieve it, but nothing bad has happened to you. But if you get a sure failure or worse, then you're probably going to suffer some kind of consequence. And because the dice system is on a curve, those extreme results are really rare, but when they do happen, they're going to be a very exciting moment. And every roll might be an extreme outcome. Now, if you want to run a light kind of narrative story game, that is all you need to play. I made this system up initially to run my own little solo games, and it works better for that than other systems I've encountered. It's built to do that, to provide interesting results that consistently push the story forward. It's built to be unpredictable, and it's built to not be constantly stopping the game to slow things down by giving you a mixed success nearly half the time, right? Because in my experience, games with a lot of mixed success, you're constantly stopping to think about, okay, what consequence occurs now? How can I progress the story? You're constantly hitting setbacks. And I'm not a huge fan of that constant stopping and slowing down. I'd rather the game just give me a definitive answer. Do I fucking succeed or not? There is, obviously, in this game, there is a little gap in the middle, right, between success and failure. If you hit the number exactly, if you are on the dot with your aptitude versus the difficulty, then you struggle. And that is where we have some of those more interesting results. That's where we can maybe make a devil's bargain, which I'll talk about in another video. That's maybe where we can have a little bit of a clash between the players. I do like mixed successes. I just wish they didn't happen as often as they do in Powered by the Apocalypse games, because those games, like, when you find a cool thing, it's really easy to lean way too hard on it, and I think those games lean way too hard on it. The mixed successes happen way too often, and they're constantly bringing the game to a grinding halt, in my experience. It just kills the momentum. But yeah, obviously, while you can play this in a very light narrative form, most of you probably don't want to buy a book and have it just say, hey, thanks for the money, mate. I wrote the first page, now the rest is up to you. We want a bit more than that. So, every success level has a corresponding number attached, the effect level. So if it's a basic success, it's a 1, a sure success is a 2, a crit's a 3, and so on. And that is how you translate from fiction to mechanics. So as a basic example, when you hit an enemy to try and hurt them, the effect level is how much harm you're going to deal to them. When you push someone back, the effect level is how many spaces you push them back, and so on. God damn it, Dante. This lizard, look at this lizard, is constantly making noise in the background the moment I start talking. Look at him. Look at him. If you pick up a special ability, something like mind control, that ability is going to tell you how to interpret effect level or success level. So with mind control, with an effect level of 1, you influence them for just one action. Effect level of 3, you totally put them under your control. And different special abilities will interpret effect level differently. But obviously we're GMs, so we want to play a bit of jazz with the rules. So you can also interpret effect level however you want. So you're using systems like clocks or progress targets like Ironsworn. You might say it's going to take 4 progress to hotwire the spaceship while your party is under attack. And then if you score a basic success, that's 1 effect level, you add 1 progress. On a sure success, that's 2 effect level, you add 2 progress. And I didn't need to make up my own mechanics for that because the system is so generally applicable, it can be used by the GM for just about everything. And this is what I mean when I say flexible. Say I'm doing a homebrew and I want like a corruption mechanic to represent how my character is physically or mentally being corrupted. I might say, okay, make a check to resist corruption using your spirit stat. And if you fail, the negative effect level determines how much corruption you take. And that is pretty much it. If you understand the effect level system, you can play this game. And because that core mechanic governs just about everything in the game, you don't have to learn new ways of doing things. Say there's a sleep spell, you don't have to count up hit points. It is all just managed by effect level. Obviously, there's a lot more crunch to this game in the tactical side of things, but this video is just the basics. But what I will say is, in combat, when you score a greater than usual level of success, you do get some fun special effects. You get bonus effects like you can, okay, say my main goal was to hurt someone, but I score a critical success. Well, then I get some bonus effect and I can use it to maybe knock them down or knock them back or put a bleed on them. Because I love special effects from games like Mithras. I love that little bit of extra crunch. And that is something, if you're just doing like a quick game for beginners, you don't have to include that. So yeah, very flexible and very easy to hack as well. So yeah, just a quick intro for the game for those who are currently checking out the beta rules. If you haven't seen, the beta rules are now available. You can go look at them on the Patreon. There's a free preview, and then there's like $5 if you want to see the full rules. So, I don't think that's too bad. Obviously, some people want to wait until it's just like a full downloadable PDF they can buy. I'm not in a position to put one out just yet. So if you want a little preview, that's where you get it. If you want to know a little bit more about why this system was built this way, if you want to know more about the design decisions behind it and some of the extra things the system can do, I did write an article yesterday on my Patreon. I'll put a link to that down below. And if you don't want to hear me yap every week, but you do want to know when the game is fully out, you can check out their website, crossguardrpg.com. There's a mailing list you can sign up for. And that is just for big announcements, like if I was going to launch a Kickstarter or something like that. So yeah, thanks for watching, dude. I got a game to run shortly. I got to kill some players, so have a great rest of your day.